Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast. I'm Nick Harper, live from Washington DC, and these are the headlines of the hour. Beijing warns the US, says there is no room for compromise after President Biden said American forces would defend Taiwan militarily if China attempted to take control of the self-ruled island by force. Indian PM Modi says committed to improving India-Japan ties a day ahead of the crucial Quad summit. PM Modi meets top Japanese business leaders and interacts with the Indian diaspora in Tokyo. As world leaders assemble in the Japanese capital for the Quad summit, WION gets you detailed analysis from experts and ground reports straight from Tokyo. Kharkiv is hit by renewed Russian shelling as Moscow steps up the attack on the northeastern city of Ukraine, even as President Zelensky calls for maximum sanctions against Russia. Former world number one Naomi Osaka may skip Wimbledon over ranking points row, as ATP and WTA tours removed ranking points from Wimbledon after all England clubs banned Russian and Belarusian players. Japan is hosting the Quad Leadership Summit in Tokyo tomorrow. India's Prime Minister and the US President are already in the city, and Australia's newly elected Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has taken off after a rushed swearing-in ceremony. The bilateral diplomacy, business meeting and talks have already begun. Ahead of the summit, the US President has launched the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. It details the US economic engagement plan in Asia. Biden has left it open, and the 13 founding countries now need to work out how to enforce their agreements.
The future of the 21st century economy is going to be largely written in Indo-Pacific, in our region. The Indo-Pacific covers half the population of the world and more than 60% of the global GDP. And the nations represented here today, and those who will join this framework in the future, are signing up to work toward an economic vision that will deliver for all people, all our people.
Earlier in the day, the American president gave a joint statement after holding talks with the Japanese PM Fumio Kishida. During the briefing, Biden gave his stern warning to China, saying that the US will not hold back if Taiwan is attacked.
You didn't want to get involved in the Ukraine conflict militarily for obvious reasons. Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made. That's the commitment we made. We are not, look, here's the situation. We agree with a one China policy. We've signed on to it, and all the attendant agreements made from there. But the idea that it can be taken by force, just taken by force, is just not appropriate. It will dislocate the entire region and be another action similar to what happened in Ukraine.
The one country watching the Quad summit closely is, of course, China. It's asked Washington to not underestimate, quote-unquote, Beijing's resolve on Taiwan.
中方对美方的言论表示强烈不满和坚决反对。 We deplore and reject the US remarks. Taiwan is an inimitable part of the Chinese territory. The Taiwan issue is purely China's internal affair, which won't stand for any foreign interference. No one should underestimate the Chinese people's firm resolution, will and capability to defend its national sovereignty and territorial integrity, and should not stand against the 1.4 billion Chinese people. We urge the US to earnestly abide by the One China principle and the 3 joint communiques.
The second country of concern for the US is North Korea. There is a threat of North Korea testing another of its ballistic missiles. But the US's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, has assured that preparations for all kinds of possibilities have been made. If North Korea tests a nuke, there will be a response. And if it doesn't, then there's always an option of returning to the diplomatic table. Prime Minister of India is also in Japan, and he has a busy 40-hour schedule with around 23 engagements. There are bilaterals, meetings with business leaders and interactions with the Indian diaspora. The Indian Prime Minister was received by the Indian diaspora at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. But not just Indians were there, Japanese citizens also gathered to welcome the Indian leader. Outside his hotel in Tokyo, the Prime Minister interacted with children and met top executives and CEOs from over 30 Japanese companies. He also highlighted investment opportunities in India under a production-linked incentive scheme.
He has quite a strong intention to develop and enhance the DX capability in India in order to improve the DX capability in India. So we are very happy to contribute to those areas.
Later, the Indian Prime Minister also interacted with the Indian diaspora, lauding the India-Japan relationship. PM Modi said that the India-Japan ties are based on culture and spirituality.
जापान एक ऐसा देश है जो एक ही साथ प्राचीन भी है और आधुनिक भी है. और टैगोर ने कहा था, Japan has come out of the immemorial East like a lotus blossoming in easy grace. All the while, keeping its firm hold upon the profound depth for which it has sprung. यानी कहना वो चाहते थे कि जापान कमल के फूल की तरह जितनी मजबूती से अपनी जड़ों से जुड़ा है, उतनी ही भव्यता से वो हर तरफ सुंदरता को भी बढ़ाता है.
On the second day of the visit will be the high-stakes Quad Summit. This is the second in-person meeting between the Quad leaders after the landmark first meeting in Washington last year. On the sidelines of the summit, PM Modi will also hold bilateral meetings with US President Joe Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, and his Australian counterpart, Anthony Albanese. Well, our managing editor, Palki Sharma Upadhyay, has sent us this report from the heart of all the action in Tokyo.
This was Prime Minister Modi's first day here in Tokyo, his fifth visit in the last 8 years, and that goes on to show how much significance India attaches to its relationship with Japan. And what an action-packed day it was. He was welcomed by the Indian community, members of the Indian community, and of course representatives from the Japanese government this morning around 8 a.m. local time at the airport in Tokyo. And since then he's had a very busy day, one-on-one meetings with some top business leaders, engagements with Japanese CEOs, And of course, he was part of that IPEF launch along with US President Biden. And then right here in the hotel to my left, he had a community engagement event where members of the Indian diaspora attended the event. They came to listen to the Prime Minister, and they accorded a rousing welcome to him. It was incredible, the scenes and the chanting and the sloganeering, and they were obviously very keen to listen to him, and he spoke about the relationship that India and Japan have had historically from the times of Lord Buddha to the knowledge partnership that they now share. And he said that while India is proud of its roots and Indians are proud of their roots, they're also a forward-looking people. And he quoted Swami Vivekananda on multiple occasions, and he went on to say that Swami Vivekananda once said that every young Indian should come to Japan at least once in their lifetime. And he said, I agree, but I also want to add to that and say that every young Japanese should come to India at least once in their lifetime. So quite a statement and quite a speech there, and the reception he got was the kind of reception that one has learned to associate with Prime Minister Modi as he holds these diaspora events. On the business front, I think a lot has been achieved. Some of the big investors, some of the big business leaders he spoke to have a lot of interests in India, and the Prime Minister is looking to make a personal pitch to ensure that more Japanese investment comes into India. Some of these companies have created, or the companies they've backed have created more than 1 million jobs in India. So this is a very important partnership and engagement. Tomorrow is again a very busy day with the Quad meeting that will happen in the morning, followed by bilateral meetings with the Japanese Prime Minister, the second meeting in 2 months. This is the 70th year of India-Japan relationship. A meeting with US President Joe Biden, the first face-to-face meeting since the hostilities in Ukraine broke out. And of course, meeting the new Australian Prime Minister who was sworn in only a few hours back, just in time for him to be able to attend the Quad meeting. So this will be a first sort of introduction to Anthony Albanese, and the Indian Prime Minister will be meeting him. So lots to look forward to on Tuesday as well.
Thank you.
Moving on, the first shipment of baby formula has arrived in the US city of Indianapolis from Germany. The cargo plane that took off from the US airbase at Ramstein in Germany has brought more than £70,000 of powdered baby formula. It's expected to cover about 15% of the immediate need. The Biden administration is planning to stock up the empty shelves with 1.5 million containers of Nestle, a multinational food and drink conglomerate's speciality infant formula.
I'm told that this shipment provides enough formula to take care of 9,000 babies and 18,000 toddlers for a week. Now, it's about 500,000 8-ounce doses of formula on that plane, about 78,000 pounds. Now, the shipment came from Zurich initially as a result of being delivered by Nestle Gerber to the airbase in Germany. It was loaded, and 8.5 hours later, it arrived here in the U.S.
Formula shortage has been developing in the US for months. It was aggravated not only by supply chain issues linked to the COVID-19 pandemic, but by the closing of the largest US formula-making plant, Abbott Laboratories. The company's chief executive has said that the plant will reopen by the first week of June, and that it would take around 6 to 8 weeks for products to start reaching store shelves. And now on to Iran. President Ibrahim Raisi has vowed to avenge the killing of the Revolutionary Guard member, Colonel Hassan Saeed Khudai. He was shot dead by a group of gunmen outside his residence in Tehran. This is said to be the latest in a string of high-profile killings in the West Asian country. According to reports, 2 assailants shot Colonel Hassan Saeed Khudai 5 times in his unarmoured vehicle from their motorbike. The shooting took place right off a highly secure street near Iran's parliament and in broad daylight. No one has claimed responsibility yet, but Iranian authorities have blamed the United States and its allies for being behind the murder. This is the highest profile murder in Iran since the November 2020 killing of the top nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhadi. Iranian media reports have also described Khadai as a defender of the shrine, a reference to Iranians who fight against the Islamic State group in Syria and Iraq within the Quds Force. The killing of Khadai can become the latest flashpoint between Iran and the United States. It's triggered the unresolved tensions between both countries that escalated following Iran's top general's Qasem Soleimani's death 2 years back. The head of the Quds Force was killed in January 2020 in a US drone attack in the Iraqi capital of Baghdad. Iranian forces also launched retaliatory attacks at 2 air bases in Iraq where American personnel were stationed. Although no casualties were reported, the incident strained already worsening ties between both countries. Correspondent Jody Cohen spoke with Dr. Eli Kaman in Israel. He's a former advisor to the Israeli Ministry of Defense and an expert on Iran and international terrorism at the International Institute for Counterterrorism.
Dr. Kaman, thank you for speaking with WION. Now, Iran has hinted that they believe that the United States and Israel was behind the assassination of the IRGC colonel on Sunday. Who do you think was behind it?
I think it is possible that Israel was involved because we know that for the last 2 years there was a wave of terrorist attempts against Israeli and Jewish targets, beginning, by the way, in 2021, January, I think, in New Delhi itself, an attempt against our embassy. Then it was in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Cyprus, in Colombia, and the last one in April against our consul in Istanbul. And what's very interesting is the Mossad kidnapped and interrogated inside India one of these operatives.
Inside Iran?
Inside Iran, yes. And he told about the attempt to kill a consul in Istanbul, a general, American general in Germany, and a French journalist in France. So clearly they are responsible, and this information leaked by Israeli sources hints to Israeli side, in my opinion.
So Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz has said that he believes the United States won't give in to Iran's demands to remove the IRGC from the US terror list. Do you agree with his assessment?
I hope so, because this is a very, very important issue. Already in 2015, the first agreement, the IRGC was left outside, and they returned to terrorist activities and guerrilla activities all over the Middle East, including against the United States targets. So I think it's very important, this pressure, and I hope that the American administration is giving now some kind of hope not to permit or to continue to keep the IRGC in the list of terrorist organizations.
Moving on, India's Unicorn Club is expanding rapidly. The startups have witnessed a massive surge in valuation, but a lot of them are struggling to maintain their business.
India has more than 60,000 startups. This makes it the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. It's witnessing a phenomenal rise of startups. Today the country has 100 unicorns, a term used to describe firms with a valuation of more than $1 billion. But the picture is not as rosy as it may look. These startups may have managed to raise funds at high valuations, but very few have managed to crack the code of profitability. You would be shocked to know that according to data shared by data analytics firm TrackXN Technologies, only 23 of India's 100 unicorn startups are profitable. While some unicorns are loss-making entities, others have been labeled as zombie unicorns. Zombie company is a company that needs bailouts in order to operate, or an indebted company that is able to repay the interest on its debts but not repay the principal. Zombie unicorn is a term for startups that keep going after funding runs out, but they don't actually grow. Investors no longer view them as being attractive. They are not dead, but they are on the verge of becoming irrelevant. Meesho, which is referred to as the Indian e-commerce rival of retail giant Amazon, is one such example. Its valuation more than doubled last year to $5 billion. Marquee investors such as SoftBank and Fidelity pumped in hundreds of millions of dollars into Meesho. They aimed to ride a boom in India's tech startups, but the tide has since turned. Now Meesho is trying to raise debt and cut expenses. Its efforts to raise fresh funds of $1 billion floundered. According to a report, investors are now wary of its monthly cash burn of around $45 million. Meesho, however, dismisses it without elaborating on the report. This journey of uncertainties in the Indian startup landscape has been going on for quite some time. In November 2021, Paytm, which was then India's biggest ever IPO, crashed 27% on debut. The payment app was criticized for overhauling the company without prioritizing profitability. Cut to 2022, April was the first month in more than a year that India had no new unicorns. Recently, edtech unicorn Vedantu fired over 600 employees. The firm, which offers online tutoring courses, believes there is a tough external market environment and capital will be scarce for upcoming quarters. While Indian food delivery firm Zomato and beauty retailer Nykaa had blockbuster listings, their shares are also down from their respective peaks. There are several other concerns that hint at a painful future for many Indian startups. Plummeting Indian tech stocks are a worry. Stories of corporate misgovernance in startups have been reported. There is now a general outcry that governance needs to be strengthened in the startup space. Investors who are spooked by fears over corporate governance are stepping up scrutiny during due diligence efforts. This could lead to a delay in funding rounds. There are fears that a funding crunch would lower valuations. It will leave startups with less cash to achieve growth and bring job cuts. Investors now believe that the days of easy money are over and startups must show a clear path to profitability. This could slam the brakes on the unprecedented growth and dull the lure of Indian startups.
And finally, perhaps the most prominent symbol of the United Kingdom, Big Ben, the world's most famous clock, has been brought back to its original Victorian glory. We leave you with these visuals. I'm Nick Harper in Washington, D.C. Thanks, as always, for watching.
This is right, Arab.